Good afternoon. I'm Ellen Walston, and I am from Vidant Medical Center in Greenville, North Carolina, not to be confused with Greenville, South Carolina. And I am going to take you through a virtual tour of our Vision Zero efforts in Greenville. And you'll notice my title, We're Number One But Don't Want to Be. That's not a good hashtag. So we will definitely share with you why we had that ranking and how we have improved. So our Vision Zero efforts began in 2018 with the implementation of our Greenville Traffic Safety Task Force, which is a multi-member team. It's some of our traffic engineers, DOT, law enforcement partners. We have a wide variety, hospital partners, myself, and my manager from our injury prevention program. So very diverse group, and we get the job done when it comes to having tasks around our city and even expanding beyond into Pitt County. So Chief Mark Holtzman, he is our police chief, was tired of being number one in the state for many years for crashes among cities of like size. So that would be like Wilmington or Asheville, because Greenville has around 92,000, and then Pitt County certainly has many more residents than that, closer to 200,000. So it was a huge challenge as we have so many visitors to our city every day. I was talking with a colleague just a little while ago. It's so hard in Greenville because someone's coming from a Husky to come to our medical center, or we have 28,000 ECU students, or we have someone visiting, and we are constantly needing to educate those drivers, and people are afraid to drive in Greenville. And when they come from our smaller rural communities, they really are anxious about coming to Greenville, and they say, oh, y'all got the crazy drivers. So we really do have that challenge. So I am going to tell you a story through pictures by sharing some of our environmental modifications. So here we go. So first of all, I want to give a huge shout out to Aaron Hines. He is our city photographer, for his amazing pictures. And he has a Flickr account of 245 pictures of our traffic safety improvements. And it all begins with a tape measure, as you see in this photo. And precision. This picture is Rick DeCesare. He is our lead traffic engineer. He is a hands-on guy. He drives a Harley. He's not afraid to get down on his knees. You see him with his knee pads, and his foresight and vision for safety have really driven our environmental modifications, as he loves to spend time in the field. This picture is our delineator systems, which are access management tools. I'm not an engineer, I'm a social worker, but I've learned a lot about engineering in my career in injury prevention, and these prevent dangerous left turns and early lane entry. We have a lot of that in Greenville. Folks are in a hurry, they want to cruise down what we call the suicide lane and get in way too early. We also recognized that we had a fatality actually at an unsafe left turn situation when we had a new neighborhood Walmart that was built. So we recognized the need to have a safe system. So our Traffic Safety Task Force identified 10 areas in our city with high crash volumes, including a fatality, as I mentioned, at that neighborhood Walmart location. And we recognized that we needed to add these delineators to prevent future crashes. And thankfully, the crash rates have declined dramatically at each of these sites. Here's Rick again, hat, vest, knee pads, and all, doing a fabulous job with precision for this new delineator. Precision is the key to success. You see him lining them up perfectly. Here's an aerial view for a location that had many instances of crashes, again due to those unsafe left turns and early lane entry. This is Charles Boulevard in Greenville, which one end is towards campus and the ECU football stadium. The other one is heading towards Vanceboro and the beach. And we were having a lot of trouble with folks wanting to, at 5 o'clock, this really backs up, and folks were wanting to cruise down that lane way too early. This is the same location from a higher aerial view, and they really work. So in 2019, our red light camera program was introduced at our top 5 crash intersections in our city. Despite 2 pending lawsuits, the program has experienced a 27% reduction in crashes within 150 feet of the intersection, a 22% reduction in rear-end collisions, a 23% reduction in the number of red light citations written, and a 4% recidivism rate of offenders with repeat red light tickets. And the intersections were also chosen based on equity. So they're main thoroughfares. These are not in underserved communities or any consideration for that. There are many of our main thoroughfares, Arlington, Greenville Boulevard, Memorial Drive, where there are all types of road users. One of our camera systems on a pretty blue day, and warning ahead, just letting our drivers know that there's a red light camera ahead. So many of our environmental modifications have been made on the campus of East Carolina University, as we have many student pedestrians. We have a great partnership with the ECU police chief, and he knows how to find money. And he has told us several times that our task force meetings are his favorite meeting, as we always accomplish so much at each meeting. And at those meetings, we have a template that we use that it will identify what our current project is, the timeline for completion, who is responsible, and that report goes to our city manager on a quarterly basis. So she reviews it with our city council, and there's total accountability. You can't say, Rick, why didn't this happen on this particular day? Because he knows that his name is on a particular project or others that are participating. And we have added numerous high visibility crosswalks and 6 of your rapid flashing beacon systems. When I look at this picture, sometimes I just feel like I'm in another city, because Greenville has just exploded with this beautiful student housing, but it's Greenville. So the biggest challenge, like I mentioned earlier, is education of our drivers, our pedestrians, and particularly our students. We have the hardest time just getting them to push the button to cross. And we have used Pirate Pathway signage with purple and gold to remind them. It's very well marked, but I go through that intersection back on, actually it's one I'll show you in just a moment, on Charles, and I watch the students, and some press, some don't. So here's an aerial view. This is the intersection that I'm talking about, crosswalk actually, of one of our Cadillac, we call it the Cadillac improvement, by the ECU football stadium. We also utilize mounted speed boards that were funded by ECU. Our chief said we can pay for those, the ECU police chief, along this DOT road to encourage drivers to slow down for pirates. Another view of the same crosswalk that details the 2 flexi posts, if you look real closely, right prior to the paddle boards, Rick had the idea of adding those 2 flexi posts to prevent drivers from changing lanes when approaching the RFB, because you would see them just like dart back and forth if there was a car stopping for the pedestrians. So he added those flexi posts, and that's been a great addition. Another signature project that focuses on precision down to the details for ADA compliance, and I know that's something near and dear to Stephen's heart, our Farmville friend. And this is an aerial view of a modular median system that was installed at a high pedestrian volume and underserved area. Many of our citizens walk from nearby apartments to these stores and need to safely cross a very busy road. This is 10th Street, which turns into Highway 33 going towards Grimesland, almost at the intersection of Greenville Boulevard and Highway 33 or 10th Street. And here are some members of our Traffic Safety Task Force. Our chief's common sense and community partner approach has contributed to significant improvements throughout the city of Greenville. We are now number 7, not number 1. We're getting there in the state and hope to continue to decline in the rankings. And I would love to connect with you about the inner workings of our task force and keys to success. So please feel free to reach out. You have my email and contact information. And also, we participated in the Vision Zero Institute in June and July, and we are looking for other opportunities to expand our Vision Zero efforts throughout our county, because we have many rural municipalities, and Stephen is on our Vision Zero team, so we're always looking for opportunities to expand outside of just Greenville as well. So thank you for this opportunity to share with you, and please don't hesitate to reach out.
That was number 3. There's going to be some questions for you at the end, so. Thanks, Trey. All right, good afternoon. Oh, okay, yeah, that does work pretty well. My name is Will Washam. I'm with the Charlotte Department of Transportation, and I'm here today on behalf of Angela Berry, our traffic safety manager, who spearheads our Vision Zero efforts in the city of Charlotte. Although it is fitting that someone else is coming to speak on behalf of Vision Zero, because it really is a collaborative effort, as I'm sure we'll hear from all of our panelists today. It's not just one person driving the program. If it's going to be successful, you need multiple stakeholders in the community to come together. So on the screen right now, these are all of the individual traffic crashes on the City of Charlotte streets between 2015 and 2019. We began working on our Vision Zero pledge in 2018, so one of the first things the traffic safety team did was try and visualize where we're having traffic crashes on our streets. We distilled that down a little bit more, and now what you're seeing are all traffic crashes within that same time period where someone was killed or seriously injured. In Charlotte, we call those KSI crashes. And so in order to understand what we in the city of Charlotte needed to do to reach Vision Zero by 2030, our traffic safety team put together what we call the High Injury Network, and you see that on the screen behind me. So these are corridors highlighted where KSI crashes are prevalent. They're ranked in a few different tiers. And this actually represents 9% of the streets in the city of Charlotte, which is still, it's a significant amount of mileage in the street. But when you think about 9%, that really is manageable. So that was kind of a big boost of confidence to folks as we began this effort that, hey, if we can focus on 9% of the streets, then we've got a real good shot of making it to Vision Zero. 64% of these are on thoroughfares, 15% are on collectors, and 21% of the high injury network are on local streets. So to develop our Vision Zero action plan, the high injury network was the first step. The second step was to solicit public input. We had a public input map that allowed folks to add comments to an online inventory for traffic safety issues in their neighborhoods. We also had extensive in-person public engagement that included over 25 community events, over 1,000 conversations about traffic safety, and then we got 1,600 comments through those public meetings on the online map. To develop this action plan, we relied on a collaborative approach that focused on equity and engagement to complement the in-depth data analysis for fatal and serious injury crashes. That development process took just over 7 months, and in January of 2019, the Vision Zero Action Plan for Charlotte was adopted. The steering committee for the Vision Zero Action Plan represents a wide range of organizations, law enforcement, transit agencies, Charlotte-Mecklenburg school systems, the North Carolina Department of Transportation, our local hospital systems, and many more. So we use the high injury network to identify locations for traffic safety improvements on our streets. Once those improvements are identified, they may be funded by any number of capital improvement programs. And in 2021, we installed 22 improved pedestrian crossings on our high injury network streets. We've also used the high injury network to identify corridors where enforcement can be focused to help advance the goals of Vision Zero. This allows the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department to focus their traffic safety patrols in areas where they will have the highest impact on reducing speeding and dangerous driving behaviors. Oftentimes, enforcement alone is not enough to discourage speeding and dangerous driving behaviors, so we use engineering solutions to help reduce speeding. That includes reducing the number of motor vehicle traffic lanes on high injury corridors. This is 6th Street in Uptown Charlotte that was on our original high injury network, and we reduced the number of travel lanes for motor vehicles from 3 to 2 and added multimodal accommodations in the form of a two-way cycle track. The high injury network has also been used to identify priority locations for streetlights and street lighting upgrades to LEDs. We currently have 51 street segments along the high injury network that are being programmed for street lighting upgrades. 25 schools have been identified in the Vision Zero Action Plan that front streets along the high injury network. And in 2021, CDOT completed a Safe Routes to School plan that looked at 5 schools and recommended safety improvements to be implemented by our Capital Improvements Program. In Charlotte, we do have many challenging streetscapes, including streets that have very long distances to cross and also long distances in between safe pedestrian crossings. Vision Zero is providing a renewed focus for identifying and engineering solutions to improve these corridors, and 5 of these corridors are currently undergoing corridor studies to provide guidance for future pedestrian safety improvements. One safety improvement that we've made a lot of progress on through our Vision Zero initiatives are leading pedestrian intervals. In 2021, we've installed 31 new leading pedestrian intervals at signalized intersections that allow road users to see pedestrians and pedestrians to begin crossing and be more visible along our high injury network. In our quest for Vision Zero by 2030, CDOT is encouraging new design philosophies and construction techniques. This includes pilot projects and quick implementation designs for intersection safety, such as slow turn wedges to slow turning motor vehicle traffic. Using the high injury network data, Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police has conducted 50 traffic safety enforcement events in 2021, and these enforcement events have targeted unsafe driving conditions on corridors with a history of bicycle and pedestrian crashes. In 2021, CDOT has begun using a new software application that houses our geolocated crash data. We share this with Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department so they can use this tool to analyze crash trends in their respective divisions across the city. As I mentioned earlier, one of the most important pieces of the high injury network is our ability to use it in capital spending prioritization. This helps ensure we're delivering capital projects that directly improve safety conditions on our streets. Vision Zero has galvanized a myriad of partners in Charlotte around a community-wide goal of reducing traffic fatalities to 0 by 2030. CDOT will continue to be a leader in our community for this goal, and we're excited to be a part of the growing number of Vision Zero communities in North Carolina. Thank you very much.
to move. We've done under those 3 of those 4 E's. And I'll start out with the encouragement and education. And with that, just an overview, I'll talk a little bit about collaboration, Vision Zero Leadership Institute, which Ellen mentioned, and a few other cities, we all participated together. And then outreach that we did in 2020 that we had started, unfortunately, right before the pandemic hit, What's Your Safe? So this is just a picture, a quick snapshot of some of the things we've done. The most recent pictures you'll see there with the students or the parents are from our Safe Routes to School, as well as our bicycle pedestrian planner, Chandler Hagan. So we did receive that grant, which is a 3-year grant to fund the program. Of course, there's no infrastructure involved, but it's just really education and outreach. So we have worked with 4 schools to do the Safe Routes to School, or Walk to School days. And we actually had our, for this fall, we had our last one this morning. It was a little cold, but we had really good participation, and the students were really excited about it. So these were pictures from the other schools that we participated with, as well as we, of course, have been collaborating with police. And the most recent collaboration was on marketing outreach, which was through TV, as well as through radio. We've seen an increase in our motorcycle crashes. And with that, it continued to increase, particularly in 2020. And police reached out to us and said, how can we work together on this? And the officer you see in the slide, he actually was involved in a near fatal crash. And he was actually on his way back from what their training program called Bike Safe, where they actually trained motorcyclists how to respond in a crash. So we did an ad with him where we were able to get it on the radio as well as TV for him to promote. It's important to know how to respond to every situation. And then the very bottom, which this is the reality that we see. And I think as each person work with Vision Zero, seeing the reality of death so often. I mean, I am an engineer, and so I've always worked with safety data, but it was never personal. So now it's become personal. We know names, we know ages, we see the family that's left behind. And in that bottom image was a picture where we were able to work with one of our advocacy groups, and that same group actually participates on our stakeholder committee and helped us develop the action plan. But Bicycle in Greensboro, big. The lady that was killed, her niece reached out to Big and said, hey, I want to promote traffic safety, and I don't want the loss of my aunt to go in vain. And so they worked together, and Big actually created this ghost bike. And we had an opportunity to speak to the family as well as the community about traffic safety on behalf of her life, and to help memorialize her life. And just to talk about a little bit with the education, so it was perfect because I will say, as I mentioned earlier, we serve as staff to the MPO. So the MPO has to do a lot of federal documents that are required. And we had a major one due last year. So we were able to get our stakeholders back together and say, hey, we know we have the action plan. We know we need to take steps, but we have a major document that all staff has to focus on. And we were able to do that right before the pandemic. So when we had the opportunity to participate this year in the Vision Zero Leadership Institute, it was great. It kind of allowed us to get some of our key people. It was a small group, but we could get some of our key people back together to re-engage us. And like that included our police, and we even have a city council person, which is perfect because she can be our voice as well as our liaison to council. She's a big advocate for safety, not just all safety, including rail safety. So she's a big advocate. So we were able to pull them together, our engineering division, to pull them in so we could refocus a little bit. And that gave us the opportunity to even get some new tools. So we thank Elyse and the staff at UNC Chapel Hill and the Safety Highway Research Center for their expertise and for their sharing through the Vision Zero grant. And then under education, the last thing under education encouragement, we did a What's Your Safe campaign. So it's just that, what's your safe? What does your safe look like? So these are pictures that we did at the Children's Museum. They have a, I think it's called Volvo Day, but basically Volvo co-sponsors a day where it's all about transportation and safety. And we go with one of our other partners, Crummy Roberts, which is a law firm that has an office here in Greensboro. And on that day, we were basically able to talk to families and kind of promote Vision Zero and the need to be safe. And we found it kind of critical when we think about changing culture, starting with the young people. So we developed outreach materials, and then we deployed various methods. And this was just one form that we did. And the little guy on the bottom is interesting. You might think he may say slow down or the seat belt, but he says stay on the road. So this is what the children were saying, and what their safe is. And then one other thing that we did under What's Your Safe is, and it was unfortunate, but we were fortunate enough to have a marketing intern with us. And that marketing intern created this material for us. He created all our communication outreach along with our communication person in the city, but he did a brunt of the work. And we actually were able to partner with our local mall, the Four Seasons Mall. They gave us a free space, and we put this information out. And this was for 2019. So in 2019, we had 33 fatalities. And then another way to reach out and to promote Vision Zero and turn to the city was we asked city employees, would you donate? We told them what we were doing. We were like, will you donate jeans? So these were donated jeans, and those represented each life that was lost. And it's hard to see, but we stamped on there the date that the fatality occurred. And this was displayed in the mall. Unfortunately, it was right before the pandemic, so we didn't get to keep it there. And then someone else wanted to rent the space. I was like, I can't believe it. Someone wants to rent our space. But we did have a little time where it was up, where it was promoted, and we were able to get it out in a different way. Also, we did a coloring and essay contest. And this was an opportunity for maybe one of our stakeholders early on when we talked about collaboration engagement. And I was in another session where they talked about, it was about education and bike safety at the schools. And one of the speakers really talked about, Jackie, I think it was, she really talked about how you can engage your businesses. And we were able to do that for our coloring contest. So these are our winners. Some of our winners, not everyone was present. So we were able to do this last year. You see everybody has their mask on. So that's our council person as well as our new director, Hannah Cockburn, who was with the DOT previously. And then Mr. Clark from State Farms, he was our sponsor, and we were able to give out at the elementary, middle school, and high school up to $100, $25, $50, and $100. And then our police officer who's been engaged, Dion, who's been very much was engaged with Vision Zero and helping us. And this is just, I had to show the pictures because I just love the creativity that the students came up with. And even one talked about look both ways, and he actually showed the head both ways. So I just think it's essential when we think about culture change to start with our young ones. Now on to the engineering, which was our second E. You've heard about the high injury network. We did do some project development and some crash data and time analysis. And with the high injury network, it's a little bit, the gentleman from Charlotte explained it, the methodology that we use, but pretty much with our high injury network, it's really reflective of our fatals and our serious injury. And I will say when we first developed it, it was all over the place. So we kind of had to refine our process, which Ron worked really hard on to do that. And we used kind of like the severity score or severity methodology that NCDOT uses, but we modified it some. And then we overlaid it with our fatals. And we were able to kind of come up with our high injury network, which we've used in various ways. And we also, in addition to just the highway injury network, we also created a biped injury network that we also use for project planning and development. This kind of highlights some of the ways that we've been able to use our high injury network. We had funding to put in pedestrian signals, and we used that was just one factor that went into, hey, what's the priority? We have several areas or intersections, but how can we prioritize where the greatest need is? So we were able to use our high injury network for this, as well as identifying where sidewalk gaps are, where we need to say prioritize. We have many needs, and the city has a big goal to have so many miles of sidewalk built. So where's the priority? We used the high injury network for that, as well as some of you all may be familiar with NCDOT's process prioritization, where you can get federal state funding for your projects. And we actually selected for the first time from our high injury network, Gate City Boulevard. We'll see how it's scored, but hopefully the next round, maybe we'll submit it or get funding from other sources. But Gate City Boulevard was the ideal location. It does have sidewalk, but it does have a lot of driveways. It's a five-lane section with a center turn lane, a lot of pedestrians. There's residential in the back, commercial in the front, and it's a main throughput. So you have a lot of vehicle traffic coming into downtown or getting to 40. So it's an ideal candidate for us to look at doing some changes to or improvement. Other things we've done under engineering is the crash data and time analysis. This is something Jon recently did for us, and we did it with the request of a police officer. So in the past, they've even asked us for our high injury network so they can look at intersections and look at maybe where they need to locate patrols or do special operations. And then recently earlier this year, we had an officer reach out and they asked us about, could we provide them with time of day analysis? So Jon was able to work with them and provide time of day so they can really look at what time of day should we be looking at where offenses may be occurring, so we can focus our resources there. And under enforcement, I will say, as you know, with the current environment that we've been in, and particularly last year, even before that, the city of Greensboro was very aware and very aware and thinking about equity and looking at it through an equity lens. So other things that we've looked at, and we're not going back to it, it's just us looking at it, is the red light camera. And as you know, we used to have the red light camera. And then also we've talked about speed enforcement, but we just talked about it and done a couple things. And with the red light camera, just as I was starting, actually, the program ended because there was a lawsuit and it ended for Greensboro. So we still have the legislative authority to reinstitute it. Of course, we'd have to go back to council, and there are a lot of mixed feelings about the red light cameras. Interesting when you talk with people, when we would do our outreach, the young people would be like, yeah, it makes sense. If you run a red light, you should get caught, whereas the adults were not as open to it. But when we did a survey, we surveyed, I think, maybe over 100 people, and 60% were for the red light camera. And then recently, our director, I think working with the Metro mayors, also submitted 2 bills. One bill was where it would take our general speed limits for the city limit, which is right now 35 miles per hour, and move it to 25, as well as look at just the red light cameras just in school zones. Unfortunately, those 2 bills, which I think Durham submitted 1 too, didn't go anywhere. But these are things that we're looking at and that our council is aware. And just looking ahead, I'm close to the end. We are preparing to do an update. So we're not updating our whole plan, the action plan, but every 2 years, we're supposed to take a look, and we're tracking certain metrics that we emphasize or identified in the plan. So we'll look at those to see where we are, as well as probably take a more safe systems approach to identifying next steps and strategies that we may need to do. We're looking at resources. Resources, of course, funding is always needed, and it's competitive now. So that is one thing that we are closely promoting, so we can get funding to do more implementations. Because certainly our engineers are doing what I would consider spot improvements, but I feel like Vision Zero is more system level, right? So it's more than just engineering. It's going to be our planning department, police, public health. So how do we fully make it a safe systems approach is what we'll really be looking at too when we update our action plan. And collaboration with everyone, as we mentioned earlier, and reconvening our stakeholders group so they can help us in implementing the plan. And just on my last slide, if you need more information from us, always feel free to reach out to either Yuan or I. There are our phone numbers as well as our email. And thank you for the opportunity to share today. And next up, we should have Leslie from Durham. I think he's in the room, so I'll stop sharing.
Next up, we've got Tracey from Durham. We're going to try to find her.
Yes.
I know I have to do something different here.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Leslie Tracey. I am a traffic engineer here with the City of Durham Transportation Department. And I have to say, first of all, after going to conferences virtually for the last couple of years, it is very great to be here in person with all of y'all lovely people. And it's great to have you here in Durham. We're very proud of our city. And I hope that y'all have had a chance to really take a look around and see all the great things that Durham has to offer. Durham, its Vision Zero program was started in September 2017. And, since then, we've been working on several different programs and procedures as part of that. And we've been doing a lot of the same things that all the other cities are doing, the education, the enforcement, the engineering. But since this is the Bike Walk crowd, I am going to focus mainly on the things that we've been doing this year as part of equity, equitable infrastructure, and pedestrian safety. So this year, when the City Council adopted the budget earlier this year, they added a 2-cent tax increase to the property tax rate to fund several different initiatives, including green and equitable infrastructure. And this was one of the things that we saw as an opportunity in the Transportation Department to get some funding for some safety initiatives, especially in the realm of pedestrian safety, which is something that we've been focusing on very much over the last few years. Another thing that happened this spring was that we worked with the University of North Carolina, some graduate students there, on a community readiness assessment. And this basically, it determined, they did some interviews with stakeholders here in Durham to determine the readiness basically of Durham citizens to accept Vision Zero. And we found through that we do have a little bit of work to do as far as education and getting the word out to our citizens. But one of the things that was really came about through that report that people mentioned over and over again was that we need to focus on vulnerable users here in the city, which are people who are not in vehicles, basically. Pedestrians, bicyclists, people who are on scooters, people who are on skateboards, all of that. And we do really, really want to be a true multimodal city. And we believe that everyone has a right to the road, that everyone should be able to travel safely on the road in the mode in which they want to travel. Pedestrian safety has really been at the top of our priority list for the last couple of years. In 2019, we had 9 fatal pedestrian crashes, which for a city our size was really a lot. It was sort of a wake-up call for us, and that we realized that we really needed to focus on this. and bring those numbers down, because that is way too many people, pedestrians, to be killed on our roads. When talking about equity, though, there is this perception in the city where our historically minority neighborhoods, they have this perception that you bring in bike lanes, you bring in sidewalks and that kind of thing, and suddenly white people start moving in. Gentrification is a huge, huge issue here in Durham. Affordable housing is really a big issue. And so I don't know that there's anything that the city can necessarily do about this perception, but it's something that we need to be aware of and that we need to talk about whenever we do engagement in the city with the residents. We need to really focus on that we're doing what we're doing for safety reasons. And it's just something that we need to be aware of and overcome. But this graph kind of tells it all. The blue is the percentage of pedestrians who were killed and seriously injured by race. The orange is the percentage of that race of the overall population in Durham County. And you can see that the Black population, which is just under 40% of the total population in Durham County, experiences more than its share of traffic violence. So it's this is definitely something that we've been really focused on this year, and it's something that we'll be taking to the city council to develop some projects and for certain neighborhoods, and these neighborhoods are going to be highest on our priority list over the next few years. So this is basically what we're talking about. We did some number crunching this year. The blue is the block groups with the highest percentage of minority population. The pink is the block groups with the highest pedestrian fatality rate or seriously injured pedestrian rate. And the purple is the overlap. And this is the kind of the better view of the main portions of the city that overlap. And so these are the areas that we're going to be focusing on. And to really drill down and find some good pedestrian safety projects, there's going to be there's also a sidewalk project, a sidewalk prioritization process going on that is really taking equity into account as well. So it's all these different programs that are kind of coming together over the next couple of years. One of the things that we are really going to be looking at is traffic calming over the next year or so in the targeted neighborhoods. There's a lot of different things going on as far as engineering. For the arterials, there's several different transit studies going on that are looking at arterials to make improvements for transit riders, which include things like crosswalks and improved bus stops and that kind of thing. But we're looking at doing some targeted traffic calming in some of the targeted neighborhoods in order to improve pedestrian safety by slowing traffic, basically. These are neighborhoods that have been historically underserved, and a lot of them don't have sidewalks and the infrastructure that some of the neighborhoods that have less minority population, I guess. In order to do traffic calming, I mean, these are smaller projects, they're less cost, or something that can be done very quickly. And hopefully they'll have an outcome on the behavior of drivers, and it'll make it safer for people to walk in their neighborhoods. And these are some of the different types of traffic calming measures that we've been looking at, like raised crosswalks at trail crossings and mid-block crossings, traffic circles, even the painted traffic circles, which are very cheap, we've done a handful of these around the city, and you can't put them everywhere. You have to be judicious where you put them, but they do work very well. So the next step, there was a version of this, a more detailed version of this presentation that was given to City Council last night. And they got some feedback from the City Council about that, and we'll be incorporating that feedback into the prioritization method for things like the traffic calming projects, the sidewalks. We're going to be applying those updated methods to identify our priority projects, and then there's going to be a period of engagement in the next year or so where we go into the neighborhoods and we talk to the residents about what they'd like to see. And then, develop the projects and identify funding sources and so on. And hopefully we'll have some concrete things to show in another, we're hoping, another year or two. So it's going to be a very busy couple of years, but that's my presentation, and thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Next up, we're going to have Eric Lamb. And bring up. Eric, which one? Thank you. All right. Thanks very much.
Good afternoon. It's good to see y'all. It's good to be in person finally after so long. So my name is Eric Lamb. I am the Transportation Planning Manager with the City of Raleigh. Our stuff's going to look a little bit different for a couple of reasons. One, because we're late to the party. We have been doing a lot of safety-related improvements in Raleigh, but not under a Vision Zero umbrella. So I could talk all day about road diets and LPIs and a lot of the safety initiatives we've done that are all consistent with Vision Zero practices, but they've not been done under a coordinated Vision Zero banner. The second is that my exposure coming to Vision Zero has been more aligned with what has been for the source of the programs, which have been European models. And so I've looked at a lot of American models, and as we've ventured into this on our front, we've opted to look at something that's more akin to some of the European programs. So I'll get into that a little bit more here. So this is something that we have been pushing for a little while from the staff side, that we were very interested. It's not that we're late to the party by design. We actually ran into some significant political resistance from our city council. And I think it's really important that we're all cognizant of what type of resistance is out there. I think the most high-profile failure to implement Vision Zero in the last few years has been in Phoenix, where the city council outright rejected the idea of a Vision Zero program. And when we think about it in terms of political accountability, the single biggest reason is because the things that we're talking about are going to really inconvenience some people. And they're going to inconvenience people in the name of safety. And so you've probably heard me talk for years about that dichotomy between safe and efficient transportation systems. The reality is it's safe or efficient transportation systems. And we're going to have to give up efficiency in order to increase safety. And frankly, there's going to be some people out there that really don't like that. And so that's one of the challenges that we faced trying to introduce this to our city council. It's really interesting what a change one election will make. We had very significant turnover with this last election, and suddenly Vision Zero became a top priority for our city council. So that put us in the position to really start to look at how do we move things forward. So as we walked into this, we said, here's what our priorities were. We wanted to base our program on other programs that had proven positive outcomes, that were extremely effective. We do not want lip service. We do not want something that's more style than substance. We want to look at programs, and I'm a shameless thief. I will readily admit it. I'm going to look to see who did well and who executed well, and we're going to mimic and take those ideas. Equity is at the forefront of our conversations right now with everything. I think the Durham example really nails that home as far as why that is. And then the other thing was, Raleigh, we've been a famously small ship for a long time. We get a lot done with a little in terms of resources. We wish we were more like Charlotte in terms of having that many staff members per capita. We just don't. And so part of it is, what do we have to advocate for to get the right amount of staffing and not just absorb this with the existing resources that we have? So we were very fortunate to be able to utilize an on-call contract that we had with VHB at the time. I really want to thank Lauren Blackburn and Candace Andre, who've led the charge for us on developing this assessment for us. As I said, we wanted to see what are the components of successful programs in other cities and what are the challenges that they've faced with implementation. Based on our collective discussion of looking at what were representative successful programs, we landed on Denver, Minneapolis, Philadelphia, and San Francisco as the cities that we had seen that had very, very positive outcomes for reducing crashes. So in terms of doing interviews with folks from each of those cities, I'm not going to read all these, but we got some key takeaways that were compiled from all of these cities. Big one again, focusing on design-oriented solutions for what we do on the streets. Looking at staffing that's not just coming from an engineering background, but with a diversity of practices for planning, data science, and communications. Being able to celebrate your projects, being able to go out there, we I know historically have been terrible about tooting our own horn, both from a modesty standpoint and just the means to do so. But it's really important to be able to point out when you've got positive successes and when you're making movement in the community. Transparency, being able to work across departments so that everyone understands what it is we're trying to accomplish in the direction that we're going in. And then quick implementation. I think that's another thing that we've struggled with in terms of larger capital projects because they're big. They once you start turning earth, you've got to deal with those types of permitting issues once you get into utilities. So really looking at the quick build projects, how can you be responsive and act quickly to get out there and get your projects on the ground? We heard that more than once from different communities. So what we're not including in our program, this is going to sound a little weird, is that we're not talking a lot about marketing and education. And the one we're really not talking about is enforcement. And I think it's important to think about enforcement from two standpoints. One is the visibility of enforcement from the events of the last year and the role of the police department in communities of color. And recognizing that based on our preliminary assessments, the streets that make up our high injury network are in low income communities. So the solution is not to get out there and say, hey, let's put a bigger police presence in these communities. That is exactly the wrong answer, okay? Actually, I want to back up. The other thing about enforcement is that we all know, and I've worked in traffic safety for a number of years, we all know that traffic safety enforcement is very effective when the police are there. And the minute that the police car is gone, traffic regresses to the mean. And police, frankly, have got better things to do. So it's really going to be a matter of being able to make sure we design the system appropriately for the outcomes that we want and not having to rely upon police for enforcement. We did a lot of outreach, or I should say in-reach, with internal stakeholders in our department from a variety of perspectives. This is our first cut at this, but as I said, we'll be looking for a more inclusive approach with other departments as we move forward. We came out of the evaluation process with VHB identifying 4 key focus areas: internal communication, data management, staffing, and funding. And from those, we were able to identify a key step associated with each one of those target areas. Being able to have that clear message, being able to have a mechanism for sharing and maintaining data. And if you haven't caught that from the previous presentations, it's a data-rich environment that we have to sort through and be able to navigate and be able to identify and prioritize those locations that have the highest crashes and why those crashes are happening. So there's a lot of data and background that has to be managed with that. In addition to just creating dedicated staff members for this, we also identified the need to have a standing Vision Zero task force or committee so that we could coordinate internally with folks. And then establishing a dedicated source of funding for projects. The idea is, again, that we're not necessarily going to try and absorb this with an existing facility programs that we have. We're going to have to grow things to be able to add to what we're already doing. So the fun part is that we're hiring. We have established our first Vision Zero program manager. It is a senior transportation engineer in my group. That job, if it's not posted today, it should be up early next week. So if you're interested, those of you at home, feel free to reach out. We're looking for somebody from a first pass that's got good understanding of what streets are, the DNA of streets, but also has a good GIS background and is able to do the analysis and to be able to tell the story as we talk to both the public and to other professionals about this. And obviously that ability to communicate, both written and verbally, to be able to get across the points to, again, the angry citizen or the cop on the street that doesn't understand why it suddenly went from 5 lanes down to 3. Now, the bad news is I'm not going to be here. This is like Moses led the tribe to the promised land but didn't get to go in. So my last day, I've been told to say I'm not retiring. I am leaving the public sector and taking my pension. But it's been a lot of fun. I think 3 decades of public service is enough for any human. And I really want to thank Terry and BikeWalkNC and for the years of collaboration that we've had. It's been exciting to see this as an entity continue on. I think Raleigh was the host for the very first workshop that we had and has hosted, I think, more than once now. And so, Terry, thank you for all your continued effort and your advocacy. It's so important. And I really look forward to working with other communities next year. Thank you very much.
The email's already changed. I think it's from the comments. So you know how to get in touch with them. It's tough to follow giants like you have on the stage and the giants that are coming up next. So we're going to turn it to Russell Dalton.
Manager for Apex, here to present information on Vision Zero in our community. Apex is located southwest of Raleigh and is crossed by major routes. Those are US 1, US 64, NC 540, and NC 55. Apex is largely suburban with more rural areas to the west and has a popular historic downtown built along the railroad corridor. Apex has grown from a population of 47,000 to 65,000 in the past 5 years, a period over which we've also collected and analyzed citation and crash data to inform development of the action plan for Vision Zero. Apex has significant diversity. Non-white, non-Caucasian groups make up 22% of our resident population. Traffic has increased along with population. Using data collected from 65 NCDOT count stations, we observed an 81% traffic increase in the past 16 years. Delays in major road projects in the past couple of years have compounded concerns about handling this traffic growth. Vision Zero started in our community with the mayor and town manager asking staff what we can do to bring Vision Zero to Apex. Staff across multiple departments were formed into a team to start the process. First, reviewing what programs were already in place, and second, trying to understand what Vision Zero meant for Apex. We proposed the 5E approach at the start of our program. Planning and engineering programs already underway included crosswalk lighting, prioritization, crosswalk studies and warning systems, safe routes to school improvements, school zone time of day beacons, traffic calming, and a traffic safety improvement program. The police department had a lot of programs underway as well, promoting safe walking, biking, and driving. Data-driven methods for tracking and preventing crime have been instrumental in guiding their efforts to improve community safety, focused on reducing behavior that leads to injuries. Apex staff members formed a task force to start work in April 2020. We drafted a resolution of support approved by Town Council in July, followed by a review of existing data. Monthly meetings maintained good communication with the group, and in late 2020, staff began drafting the scope and schedule for our Vision Zero action plan. Crash data analysis was in full swing by January of the following year, along with finalizing the scope and schedule for the action plan. In the spring, the task force drafted the commitment statement and guiding principles prior to several members, along with a representative from the NPO attending the Vision Zero Leadership Institute. Also during this time, the task force received approval from Town Council to reach out to potential steering committee members in order to guide the development of the action plan. Kickoff meeting was held with the task force and steering committee in September. The task force includes 7 staff members representing transportation, planning, police, and administration. The steering committee includes 12 volunteers from across the community, county and regional agencies and organizations. Guided by the steering committee, the task force will prepare for a public workshop in early 2022 as they continue work on the action plan. Development of the action plan has been divided into 9 tasks over the course of 12 months, including 2 steering committee meetings and 2 public workshops. Adoption of the action plan is anticipated in September of 2022. The plan and policy review section of the document was drafted in October. Crash data over the past 5 years revealed over 6,700 reported collisions. 3% of those resulted in a severe injury or fatality. The general trend shows an increase in crashes, but not all years reflect an increase from the previous year. The most recent year is actually the second lowest, but that could be influenced by a significant reduction in overall traffic volume in the first half of 2020. Pedestrian and bicycle-related crashes represent a very small percentage of overall crashes in Apex, but those types of crashes are many times more likely to result in a severe injury or fatality. Less than 1% of overall crashes for bike and ped result in more than 10% severe injuries and fatalities. In an attempt to quantify the potential benefits of crash prevention in Apex, we used the value of statistical life, or a VSL, from a US DOT. Values representing an overall cost to society have been estimated for each level of severity on what is called the CABCO scale, with the highest being a fatality. Presenting this information to decision makers is important to us to be able to quantify, what you could actually gain from the program. It's a way to prioritize the use of limited funds on safety improvements across the community. Using VSL, we estimated that $405 million could have been saved in total cost to society if all these crashes in Apex had been prevented over the past 5 years. We also looked at where crashes occur. 78% occur in the public right-of-way, but those crashes represent 93% of all severe and fatal crashes. 61% of all severe and fatal crashes occur on public road segments not associated with traffic signals. We also looked at what types of events lead to crashes and likelihood of severe and fatal injuries across crash types. 6% of all crashes not part of the top 3 types represent 34% of severe and fatal crashes. The top 3 crashes make up half the total, including rear end, angle, and left turn crashes, representing 52% of severe and fatal crashes. Half of crashes occur between noon and 6 p.m., while 63% of severe and fatal crashes occur during 3 peak times, representing 9 hours of the day. And those are between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. It was interesting to find that both crash frequency and severity is statistically higher on Friday than any other day of the week. And in contrast, we found that severe and fatal crashes are statistically lower on Wednesday compared to any other day. We didn't find that weather conditions or construction activity were a contributing factor to crash frequency or severity. This was somewhat surprising, but it could be that drivers behave more cautiously and speeds may be lower under those conditions, which could mitigate potential negative impacts those types of events would have on safety. And finally, to sum up the next steps, this December, we plan to have steering committee meeting number 2, followed by public workshop number 1 in January. So I appreciate your time today. And next up, I will turn it over to Erica Martin with Mooresville.
Hi, this is Erica Martin, town of Mooresville. Not sure how to get my video to work, but because of time, I'll just truck right along. My presentation promises to be short because as the newbie to the group, we haven't done much. So Mooresville's top 10 tips / our story in becoming a Vision Zero community. Oh, there I am. I can go to the next slide. There we go. In 2019, I attended the Campo conference in Charlotte and a session on Vision Zero, which I'd started to hear about Vision Zero in transportation land, but I knew I needed to learn more about it. One of the speakers at the time said you need to find your Bob to help you actually implement Vision Zero. And fortunately for me, my Bob happened to be sitting right next to me. You see her in the far right of the screen with the bun. Her name is Cammie Weckerly, and she's the town's transportation engineer. We had known each other professionally for a while, but had recently become new co-workers when I took the transportation planning position with Mooresville. So at lunch, we were enthusiastically talking about all the great sessions we had gone to and how we wanted to team up and actually do something with this information. Like many of the places you come from, traffic conversations are dominated by the personal automobile, and we really wanted to shift the focus to our most vulnerable road users. So Cammie came up with this name, Conversations Without Cars, and we knew we needed to start with internal organizational conversations before we could shift outward. So with our bosses cheering us on, we invited key players of town staff, finance, public works, fire, police, mapping, public information, et cetera, to be part of Conversations Without Cars. One Bob is great, but a superhero force is even better. Being a planner, I of course said we need a plan, and we did. We worked on one, but I have to tell you, it started off a bit rocky as we had a member of our team that I'll call Jordan that pushed back on the idea of Vision Zero. He said, this is not practical or a realistic goal. But despite his concerns, he stayed with us on our journey, and he even found funding for bicycles for our bicycle training events. So in summer of 2019, our committee came up with this vision statement, and we rolled up our sleeves to get things done, not knowing that a few months later, COVID would impact these plans, or the death of a cyclist in our community would propel our work. In January of 2020, an avid cyclist, Earl Gillian, was fatally struck. And just 2 weeks later, a young cyclist, Seth Jones, was severely injured. Soon, we had the cycling community showing up at our town board meetings demanding change. So Cammie and I asked the town council to publicly support the work we were doing and move towards becoming a Vision Zero community. Although the general public might not be aware of what Vision Zero is, everyone is united in wanting safe streets. I wish Mooresville's Vision Zero story did not include the death of Earl, but while he was the first cyclist we had fatally killed as a cyclist, Mooresville's story since 2015 had included 10 pedestrian deaths as well. Early on, when I was working on a grant for the town, the application had a question about bike ped deaths. I got chills because I realized one of the numbers represented was someone I had considered a friend, and some of you may have known as well, Jeff Archer. Jeff was a huge advocate for bicycling in the Lake Norman area and had been my personal bicycle mechanic since my high school days. He was killed as a pedestrian crossing a street in Mooresville by an impaired driver in 2016. Seeing him represented as a number made me stop and promise to never look at that kind of data as just numbers again. I went and looked at all the obituaries and news stories for every individual represented during that time frame, and I've printed out and unfortunately continue to print out the stories and faces of those bicyclists and pedestrians who have lost their lives on Mooresville's roadways. And so when you encounter a Jordan while doing this work, ask whose name or names we should write down. While a number may seem acceptable, no loss of a real person is. And when you know you are working to save lives through prevention, it's not hard to push for more and better in the place you live or work. In Mooresville, we now have a Safe Streets website. We switched out all our Share the Road signs with Bikes May Useful Lanes signs, which is a first in Division 12. We put our stuff in newsletters. We consistently go after grants to improve our bike ped network. We include bike ped facilities in our road improvement projects and long-term plans from the start. We've reduced speed limits. We've made sure consultants working on our transportation-related studies tell us how their recommendations get us closer to Vision Zero. 1 year after we asked council to support Conversations Without Cars, we asked them to formally adopt a resolution to become a nationally recognized Vision Zero community. Just recently, we applied for more bike ped infrastructure grants and funding for a town-wide Vision Zero action plan. Our bike plan update is coming to a close. Last month, I provided the town board an update with where we are in greenway development. And when I mapped out everything in the works, like right now, not 25 years from now, I thought the dream of an all ages and abilities bike ped network and safe streets system is actually within reach. We've been fortunate in Mooresville to have Angela Berry and Will Washam so close and accessible to share their expertise, ideas, and just their grit to getting it done. And if you need a date to Vision Zero, Elyse and the UNC team can hook you up with a nearby community and help keep you accountable to your own program. Finally, in Mooresville, we have reimagined the whole Mind Your Manners saying to focus on road safety. When we developed our P's and Q's campaign, one of the Q's is quiet your phone. And Cammie asked me if I knew how to do that, and I didn't, and she didn't, but we figured it out and we quieted our phones that day. So if you text me while I'm driving, you'll receive this message where I ask you to set your phone to do not disturb. And it doesn't matter if you're my boss, my mama, my man, or my bestie, a text message can wait. And while we all want to know how horses travel to the Olympics, none of these messages are worth dying over. None of these messages are worth taking or seriously injuring another life. So please walk, bike, or drive the talk. Quiet your phone right now today. Google it. Thank you everyone for your time.
At HDR, we're passionate about making North Carolina a better place to walk and roll. Our Salem Parkway project in Winston-Salem upgraded a downtown greenway, integrated a bike and pedestrian tunnel into a highway reconstruction project, and delivered 2 signature bridges. From planning to construction, we're ready to help you imagine, design, and deliver the next generation of bicycle and pedestrian projects for our communities.
Hi, I'm Lisa Regal with AARP North Carolina. We enjoy working with BikeWalkNC as we work to make our active transportation safer through efforts like the Bicycle Safety Quiz, Vision Zero, and Complete Streets.